A safe route gives people choices. A trap gives them one direction. Tessa Mar saw the first lie under the Dallas venue. Slate stepped beneath the safe route sign and stopped. The German Shepherd had been moving clean a second earlier. Nose low, shoulders loose, breath steady in the service air. Then his weight shifted back. His ears cut toward her. He checked once, not afraid, not confused. Refusing to give the corridor his body. Above them, the matchday crowd rolled through concrete like distant weather. Heavy with heat and impatience. Is less than #0. 4# is greater than Dallas. Had turned the upper concourses into a furnace. Down here, the route offered shade, cooler air, bright paint, and a promise printed in calm block letters. That was the part Tessa disliked first. The entry felt too easy. Past the sign, the corridor bent left and narrowed. A moving crowd would already be committed before realizing the choices had thinned. A good exit let fear spread out. This one seemed to gather it and aim it forward. Grant Vale came up on her right with a tablet under one arm. Sweat darkened the collar of his work shirt. He was broad, gray at the temples. Is less than #0. 4# is greater than. Built like a man who trusted load-bearing walls more than human instinct. Dogs feeling the heat, he said. Fan hum throws them off sometimes. A younger staff supervisor behind him gave a quick nod. Already relieved to have a normal explanation. Tessa did not answer right away. She set one hand on the metal rail beside the entry. It was warm, not hot, carrying the day's pressure through the building's bones. Slate stayed at her left knee. Body angled away from the mouth of the root. His breath changed now, tighter at the end. Tessa stepped inside without asking him to follow. 5 paces in, the shaded entry still felt friendly. 10 paces in, the turn-back space shrank. A service cart parked wrong would stop 2 people from reversing. A panicked group would move forward not from trust, but from lack of room. It's marked safe, Grant said. It starts safe, Tessa said. Those aren't the same thing. She went another few steps, slow enough to feel the root before it could sell itself. Dry concrete dust rasped under her boot soles. The fans inside the channel hummed unevenly. One smooth, one with a low wobble that pulsed in the throat, is less than #0. 5# is greater than. The sound pulled a thin memory with it. Not a scene. Not a face. Only a last radio click and the silence that had followed. A command everyone had believed was clean. Tessa let it pass. Old ghosts did not get to brief the present. She looked instead at what bodies could do here. 1 person could hesitate. 2 could turn sideways. 6 would be a plug. 20 would become a direction with legs. The exit arrow beyond the bend pointed toward daylight and heat. From where she stood, the route gave no easy sideways answer. If the far end failed, is less than #0. 5# is greater than Slate remained near the sign. Not disobedient, just planted. His eyes moved from her to the bend and back again. He had not found an answer. He had given her a contradiction. That was enough to keep working. Tessa backed out. She watched the way her own shoulders wanted to turn before the walls allowed it. The route took that choice a half-second late. A pair of event staffers passed the far service cross, laughing too loudly, badges bouncing, their voices flattened by the concrete. Nothing about them looked scared. Is less than #0. 4# is greater than. Nothing about the route looked illegal. That was how bad spaces survived inspection. Clean paint. Good signage. No blood where people expected to see it. Tessa crouched near the inside edge of the bend. The wall base met a run of cable tray skinned by careless hands. Slate gave one low breath behind her. Pale gray cable dust clung to a torn strip. It was half caught beneath the lip of the tray. At first it looked like plastic from a service band. Then she saw the printed edge of an ID, ripped hard enough to curl. A wristband, maybe. Service access, maybe, is less than #0. 3# is greater than. She touched the dust with 2 fingers. It came away gritty and pale. The kind left by cable sheathing, not shoe dirt. On the white surface, near the tier, a smear of blood had dried thin and dark. Human and easy to miss. Tessa lifted it without speaking. Grant stopped talking. Behind her, Slate stared into the corridor. As if the route had finally answered badly. The safe route stopped being a review. Somewhere inside it, someone had put skin against concrete hard enough to leave a piece of himself behind. Tessa hated quiet evidence most. It waited. Tessa folded the torn wristband into her palm and followed the dust. It did not make a line the way clean evidence did in training rooms. It came in hints. A pale rub on the wall base. A scratched patch under a cable tray. A place where someone's shoulder had brushed too hard against painted concrete. Slate lowered his nose and took the cooler strip along the floor. Not pulling, just committing more than he had at the sign. The service line ran deeper beneath the venue, away from the reassuring glow of the marked entry. Overhead, the crowd roar, faded to a constant wait, is less than #0. 5# is greater than. Less sound than weather trapped in concrete. Tessa moved with one hand loose and one hand holding the torn band, reading the space ahead. The corridor gave room for one cart. Maybe 2 men side by side if neither needed to turn fast. After the second bend, even that generosity died. It was the middle of the route. The middle did what it had been built to do. Keep bodies moving. That did not make it evil. It made it useful to anyone who needed a person to keep moving. Even after the person understood he should have turned back. Slate worked the cooler concrete for 30 yards before the air changed. A service fan kicked on somewhere ahead with a flat metallic whine. The scent field broke apart. Tessa felt it before Slate showed it. The moving air hit her face from the wrong angle. Stale sweat and dust and hot wiring stirred into one useless wash. Slate checked left, then right, then looked back at her, frustrated but honest. The line was gone. Grant had followed, breathing harder now. His tablet was tucked away. "Bad design is not malice," he said. "He is less than #0. 4# is greater than a bad turn, a hot exit, a fan fighting pressure. That's a venue problem, not a kidnapping." Tessa kept walking. "Predators don't need to build bad design," she said. "They use it." Grant's jaw worked once. He glanced past her to a gray service door recessed between 2 pipes. "One door in the wrong state," he said. "Lower now, and this channel decides where everybody goes." It was not a lecture. It was worse. It was a concession he did not want to make. Tessa heard the cost in it. They reached a utility light corridor. The bulbs flickered in tired sequence. Is less than #0. 4# is greater than. They made every badge flash legitimate for half a second. That was where Tessa saw the movement change. Not panic. Not a chase. 3 people in event service colors crossed the far end. Calm as workers who knew exactly when no one looked twice. One pushed a rolling bin with a folded tarp over the top. Another carried a clipboard angled outward. Credential visible enough to satisfy a lazy glance. The third watched timing instead of direction. Tessa slowed before Grant could speak. Slate lifted his head. Scent broken but body alert. Reading tension she could not yet name. Radio chatter clipped in and out around them. Fragments of gate load. Hydration stations. A minor medical call above. Nothing clean enough to explain the men ahead. The rolling bin bumped once at the threshold. Something under the tarp shifted wrong. Too heavy at one end. Too human in the way the fabric tightened and released. No one shouted. That was the cleanest part of it. And the dirtiest. The crew trusted the rhythm of the building. Carts moved. Staff nodded. Radios cracked. Is less than #0. 3# is greater than. A busy corridor forgave almost anything that looked scheduled. Tessa moved before the thought finished. Hold, she said, not loud. The man with the clipboard turned with professional irritation already arranged on his face. Behind him, the tarp slipped. A hand appeared for less than a second, brown with dust at the knuckles. Wrists scraped raw where a band had been torn away. The face that rose behind the bin was not a player, not a dignitary, not anyone the venue would stop a match to save. He was lean, heat-struck, eyes wide and trying to focus through fear. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than a stadium electrician, if the service patch on his shirt meant anything. His gaze found Tessa's hand, the torn wristband, then her face. He did not just stare. He shoved one heel against the inside edge of the bin. A small, desperate break that made the wheels squeal. It bought him half a second of being seen. The effort cost him. His mouth worked around air. Blue pipe, he whispered, or mouthed, forcing the words out like he was pushing a live wire through his teeth. The fan hum tried to eat them. Tessa did not let it. Tessa stepped toward him. Is less than #0. 4# is greater than Slate, surged one pace and stopped with her. The clipboard man's irritation vanished. The tarp snapped back down. The bin jerked hard around the corner, wheels clattering once, then smoothing out as if nothing had happened. The electrician disappeared into the no-choice middle before Tessa could reach him. He took the words with him. He left only the blue pipe hanging in her head like a route marker nobody wanted named. The bin did not vanish so much as get swallowed by the building. It rolled around the bend. Wheels, chattering, once, is less than #0. 3# is greater than. Then it dropped into the low, busy rumble of service traffic. Tessa followed before Grant finished, saying her name. Slate moved at her left. No longer working scent. Just reading bodies, pressure, wrong angles. The corridor tightened ahead. Painted concrete sweating under the heat trapped in the walls. Radio traffic broke over Tessa's earpiece in pieces. Hydration queue. Gate delay. Med assist. Crowd density at the south stairs. Nothing about a kidnapped electrician under the venue. Nothing clean enough to make people above risk. A full stop. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. The torn wristband stuck to her palm. She saw the bin again at a service reach point. 2 corridors fed a narrow mouth there. The tarp had slipped. Rafa's face showed for a breath. Gray with heat, one eye swollen, mouth working under the cloth pressed near his jaw. Close enough to touch if the building had given her one more yard. It did not. The no-choice middle had done its little trick again. Bodies ahead. Wall to the right. Pipe rack to the left. Retreat filling behind her with Grant and Slate and stale air. Mara, I have a living male being moved below grade, Tessa said. Service colors, false rhythm, possible restraint. I need this route held. The answer came through chopped and angry. Writing crowd noise. Negative on full closure. Crowd impact is already red on 2 concourses. You pinch that dry route, without confirmation, and we create a heat bottleneck upstairs. Mara Holt did not sound corrupt. Worse, she sounded right inside the problem she could see. Tessa could protect, pursue, and report under the event agreement. She could respond to a threat in front of her. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. She could not freeze a World Cup venue by instinct, and a torn wristband. No matter how much her body had already voted, Grant heard enough to go still. "She's not stonewalling," he said. "She's counting bodies." "So am I," Tessa said. She moved. Slate's shoulder brushed her knee. His body started to angle across her before her conscious mind finished naming the pressure. 2 crewmen shifted at the reach point. Not panicked, not surprised. They were closing lanes, making the corridor choose for her. The air tasted of dust, old sweat, and hot insulation is less than #0. 5# is greater than Tessa. Felt the building arguing for delay with every fan pulse and every broken radio click. The man who stepped into view behind the bin did not need a speech to announce control. Hale Rusk wore event service gray, like it had been issued to him by the building itself. Sleeves rolled. Credential clean. Face quiet. He looked once at Tessa, once at Slate, then at the corridor behind her, measuring time instead of fear. The clipboard man grabbed too high on Rafa's arm. Rafa cried out, a small broken sound that cracked under the fan hum. Hale's hand, snapped up, is less than #0. 4# is greater than not the shoulder, he said. 3 words, flat as a door closing. The grip changed at once. Rafa sagged, but stayed upright. Knees trembling. Forced mobile by men who needed him conscious more than comfortable. That told Tessa enough. Not the whole plan. Just the living shape of it. Hale was not waiting for courage. He was waiting for rhythm. The fan wobble. The radio overlap. The cart noise at the cross. The tiny service lull before the next staff wave. Tessa saw the movement window snap toward closing before anyone on command could name it. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than ordinary guards chased men. Better ones broke timing. She crossed the remaining space before permission could catch her. "Rafa," she said, low and hard. "Look at me." His eyes found her, lost her, found Slate, then the torn band in her hand. Tessa caught the bin's front edge and drove it sideways into the men's timing. Not hard enough to crush anyone. Enough to break the clean movement window Hale had been protecting. For half a second, the whole reach point lost its rhythm. Grant swore under his breath. Slate moved into the gap. Chest forward. Not attacking is less than #0. 3# is greater than. Just making a living wall where Hale's men wanted empty air. Tessa got 2 fingers around Rafa's sleeve. Sweat soaked the fabric. His skin burned dry at the wrist where the band had been ripped away. "Move with me," she said. Rafa tried. Hale saw it and changed before his crew did. His gaze sharpened on Tessa. Not with surprise now, but with classification. Serious threat. Direct obstruction. Not staff noise. "Shift him," Hale said. "Keep him walking." The quiet movement ended. One man came off the wall toward Tessa's right. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. Another stepped across the corridor mouth to cut Grant out. The bin lurched. Rafa stumbled into Tessa's reach, then away again. Trapped between hands that wanted him alive and a route that wanted everyone forward. Tessa chose the living man over the clean report. Over the polite chain. Over the kind of delay that buried bodies neatly. She pulled Rafa toward her. Slate's breath hitched. The corridor mouth closed around them. The first shoulder came in hard. The shoulder hit came from the right. Low and heavy. Meant to take Tessa off Rafa without dropping Rafa with her. Hale's people had rules then. Ugly rules, but rules. Tessa took the impact on the side that had been bad since a corridor long before Dallas. White heat flashed through the joint so cleanly it almost made the rest of the world disappear. Almost. She kept her left hand locked in Rafa's shirt. She turned enough to put her body between him and the wall. The channel mouth squeezed them into bad math. One injured handler. One heat-hit electrician. One dog with no room to work clean. 2 crewmen closing. Grant boxed behind a service cart and a pipe rack is less than #0. 5 is greater than. The first man's shoulder pointed at her ribs. The second man watched Rafa's hips, not his face. That was the tell. They were not trying to hurt the witness. They were trying to peel the protector away from him. Tessa read the little geometry before contact finished forming. Wall on her right. Pipe shadow ahead. Slate on the low line. Rafa, too tall and too exposed. She moved him into the only protected pocket the corridor offered. Half a step lower and behind her hip. The concrete gave nothing back. It shoved sound into their faces. Breath. Boot scrape, the wet drag of Rafa trying to stay upright. Slate's nails catching on dust. Tessa did not have space to win. Space was the prize. Down, she told Rafa, meaning smaller, lower, alive. He bent because fear understood simple words. The air was too warm for this much contact. Too thick with sweat and concrete powder. Everybody in the threshold stole oxygen from every other body.
Slate came in as pressure, not fury. His body cut across the first man's knees. It changed the shape of the collision. Not an attack, not some clean miracle with teeth. Just 70 pounds of trained animal, making a man adjust when he did not want to. Tessa used the second it gave her. She drove Rafa behind her hip, then met the next shove with her forearm and shoulder and the wall. The choice was ugly and exact. She did not chase the nearest man's hands. She watched his feet. The way his weight loaded before the shove. The way his partner waited for her to overcommit. The old part of her had cleared worse rooms under worse light. It wanted speed. The older, better part chose timing. Pain jumped down her arm. Hot and electric. Her fingers went half numb. Nice, very professional. Her body was filing complaints now. Hale stood beyond the moving bodies, close enough to command without touching the mess. "Keep him upright," he said. One of the crew had a hand twisted into Rafa's collar. Hale cut him a look sharp enough to move bone. The grip dropped lower. Rafa coughed, dragged in air, stayed on his feet. That mattered. Tessa caught it between blows. Hale did not care if Rafa hurt. Hale cared if Rafa could still walk, still answer, still be presented somewhere in one piece. There was leverage in that. Leverage did not help much when a man's elbow drove her into concrete tin. The wall hit her back first, then the bad shoulder, then the breath left her in one ugly piece. For a second, the corridor narrowed to static. Fan hum. Crowd weather above. Rafa's terrified breathing. Grant barking something that vanished under impact. Tessa let herself fold with the hit instead of fighting it straight. Not technique. Survival. A stiff body broke faster. Her boot slid on dust. Her palm found Rafa's ribs. Counted him upright. Counted him still moving. Slate pressed forward again. Shoulder to thigh. Forcing the nearest crewman to step wide. That step opened a sliver. Tessa took it. She shoved Rafa through the gap. Not gently. She followed with her own body half-turned to cover him. The crewman grabbed for Rafa's shirt. Tessa broke the grab by moving Rafa, not by chasing the hand. The fabric tore. Rafa made a thin sound. More anger than pain this time. Good. Anger meant present. Grant hit the side of the rolling bin with both hands. Not enough to block the corridor, enough to ruin the clean line for a breath. "Tessa!" he snapped. Warning, not question. She saw what he meant without turning. The mouth behind them was filling. The route had stopped offering backward as a serious option. Hale changed the route, the way a good field man changed weather. Without discussion, without drama, just pressure in the next direction. He looked past Tessa, to the dark crossing ahead. There, the utility lights thinned, and the air shimmered warmer. The cooler channel behind them had become noisy, crowded, compromised. The hotter path waited beyond the threshold, open enough to punish lungs and legs, low-lit enough to hide one more bad choice. Hale pointed 2 fingers. His crew shifted with him. "Move him," he said. "Now! Not kill her, not drop the dog. Not wreck the electrician. Move him. Tessa heard the shape of the next problem. She hated how clean it was. Direct pressure had worked. Rafa was still with her, but barely. Her right arm hung wrong, heavy from shoulder to fingertips. Slate's breath had gone rough in the trapped heat. Grant stared at the torn shirt in his hand. Like bad design had finally grown teeth. Tessa got her good hand on Rafa's back. "Walk," she said. "Do not stop." The corridor behind them stayed narrow. Ahead, the hot route opened like a dare. The hot route did not open into freedom. It opened into a low-lit crossing, where the building remembered the public existed. Staff moved at the far edge, in half-seen bursts. Shirts pale, under utility lamps, pushing water racks, carrying collapsed stanchions, doing ordinary work in the wrong place, at the wrong second. Tessa felt the danger of them before she saw faces, background, bodies that did not know they had become the line she could not cross. Rafa sagged against her good hand, breath hitching with each step. His torn shirt stuck to the sweat on his back. Slate stayed tight at her left. Head high now, breath rough, ears cutting between echoes. Noise broke strangely here. Every boot scrape came back sharp. Radio fragments bounced off concrete and died. Hale's crew used the crossing without rushing, spreading just enough to make Tessa choose between stopping them and protecting the people behind them. Her right arm still hung heavy, shoulder complaining in hot pulses. She could act. She had authority for that. She did not have permission to turn a crowded service crossing into a place innocent people paid for her speed. That was the job, naturally. Save one man without spending the wrong one. The first hard pressure came without shouting. One man stepped into the crossing. He raised his hands just enough to change the shape of the room. Another moved behind him, angled toward the dimmer route on the far side. Tessa saw Hale farther back, not hiding, not performing, just watching timing. His face stayed quiet. That made him worse. Rafa's knees softened. Tessa hauled him upright with a sound that was half breath, half anger. "Stay with me." Grant came in behind her, still carrying the shock of the last corridor. His eyes flicked from the staff background to the men using it. "They're putting civilians behind the pressure," he said. Low. He did not make it a lecture. He sounded like a man realizing a drawing had become a weapon in human hands. Slate pushed forward one pace, then checked himself, hemmed in by legs, echo, fear, and the wrong people too close. Tessa's hand found the weight at her side. The movement was legal. It was not clean. The man at the crossing gave her the smallest opening. His shoulder turned. The line appeared, then broke under a staffer stepping through with a crate against his chest. For one breath, Tessa could have taken the shot. The shape was there. The hostile's body cleared just enough to tempt the part of her that counted angles faster than words. Then the staffer behind him shifted, white badge flashing, mouth open around some complaint he would never finish if Tessa chose wrong. Rafa shook against her. Slate's breath scraped at her knee. Heat pressed down through the concrete like a hand. Tessa did not take it. "No shot," she said, more to Grant than to herself. Someone needed the truth before panic rewrote it. The restraint cost more than recoil ever would have. A less disciplined shooter would have called the opening good enough. The background would have become somebody else's problem. Tessa had spent a career learning that good enough killed strangers. She snapped her attention off the opening. She used pressure instead, forcing the nearest man back with movement, voice, and the promise of consequence, without letting the moment become a public disaster. "Down. Move left." Rafa obeyed badly, but enough. Grant yanked a rolling water rack out of a staffer's path. He cursed like a man trying not to panic. The hostile who had shown her the bad line slid behind the civilian movement. He vanished into the low light. Hale moved with him, gaining distance because Tessa had refused to buy time with someone else's body. It was the right call. It still tasted like failure. Rafa saw the escaping man at the last second. His whole body changed, not stronger, sharper. Fear found a point, and drove itself through him. He grabbed at Tessa's sleeve, with fingers that felt dry and hot. His nails caught the fabric. "Wrong turn," he said. The words came out cracked, too loud for the space. Then again, softer, as if he was trying to put them back where they belonged. "Wrong turn." Tessa looked from his face to the dim route Hale had taken. The phrase did not explain anything. That was why it mattered. Real memory rarely arrived dressed for court. It came broken, sweating, late, dragging the wrong details in its hands. Grant heard it too. His eyes went to the crossing, then to the service doors beyond it, then back to Rafa. He gave a bleak little nod he probably did not know he had made. Slate leaned against Tessa's leg for half a second, not seeking comfort, just spending balance. Hale's crew had gained distance. The wrong shot had stayed unfired. The living witness was still breathing. Somewhere ahead, the face Rafa remembered was getting away. The words wrong turn followed him down the route like a debt. The words stayed with them longer than the man who had caused them. Wrong turn. They moved after Hale, because stopping in the crossing would have given the route another body to manage. The heat thickened past the low lights. Trapped in a service pocket, where the concrete seemed to hold the day, like stored anger. Tessa kept Rafa ahead of her, with her good hand. She felt every step through the ruined argument in her shoulder. Slate stayed close for the first 10 yards. Then his rhythm changed. It was small, which made it worse. One beat late at the turn knee. One extra drag of breath. His head dipped, came up, dipped again. Pride, trying to outrun physics, like every bad operator Tessa had ever known. She heard the panting sharpen before she let herself look down. His tongue had gone too wide. His eyes still worked, still searched, but the focus had started slipping at the edges. Tessa felt the ugly answer land in her chest. She had read his refusal at the crossing as pressure. Discipline, control, some of it had been warning. Not about villains, about heat, about limits. The corridor had been counting him too, with no mercy. "Keep moving," Grant said, but it came out uncertain because he had seen her see it. Tessa pulled the small reward from her pocket without thinking. A stupid little habit from better training days. She held it low. Slate looked at it, then away. Refusal, not disobedience. Data. The kind nobody liked because it demanded a decision right now. Rafa sagged against the wall, breathing in thin strips. Ahead, the corridor bent toward another service cut, the place Hale needed if he wanted clean time. Behind them, staff voices echoed and faded, uselessly normal. Tessa crouched, despite the complaint in her shoulder. She put her hand against Slate's coat, too hot under the working fur. His body trembled once, anger and heat fighting over the same muscles. "No," Grant said softly, as if arguing with the building. "Tessa, if we stop, we stop." Her voice came out flat. Good. Flat held better than grief. Slate was not gear. He did not get spent and replaced, because the clock was ugly. Tessa had pushed him against urgency and called it judgment. That mistake belonged to her, not the dog. The lost seconds started bleeding immediately, fast and ugly. Grant looked down the corridor, where Hale had gone, then back at the route behind them. His face had lost the last clean comfort of theory. "It wasn't built as a trap," he said, "but he's using it like one." The admission landed hard, because it was short enough to be true. He pointed once toward a service door recessed past a bend. Not explaining method, just consequence. One choke there, one bad door state, and the middle keeps feeding him bodies until the heat does the rest. Tessa nodded, because a longer answer would have wasted air. Rafa slid lower on the wall, eyes half shut, lips moving. One trembling hand lifted without strength. It pointed not at Hale, not at the men. It pointed at the line of conduit above the service bend. Electrician's eyes, even through heat and fear, still knew color and route. She caught his chin before his head dropped too far. "Rafa, stay here." His gaze jerked open. It did not settle on her. It went past her shoulder, somewhere blue and terrified. "Wrong turn after blue pipe," he said. Exact, cracked. No explanation behind it. Only a memory finally finding all its teeth. Grant went still. Tessa felt the phrase connect to the service colors. The torn band, the crossing, the face that had escaped. Not solved, aligned. There was a difference. The difference mattered when people were dying by inches. A radio fragment came through, half buried under crowd roar and fan wobble. Movement at the next cut. Service access opening. No names. No clean map. Just enough to tell Tessa the delay had paid Hale. He had reached the second window. or close enough that the route had begun to obey him again. The dry channel ahead breathed warmer. It pushed air toward a brighter seam that smelled of asphalt, sun, and exhaust. Open outside heat. Bad for Rafa, worse for Slate. Useful to a man who needed everyone slower than his plan. Tessa stayed crouched 1 second longer, hand on Slate, feeling him steady because she had stopped asking him to pretend. The cost arrived anyway. Distance, time, Hale's advantage lengthening past the bend. Grant shifted beside her, ready but silent now. No more argument left to decorate the obvious. Tessa rose with her bad arm close to her ribs. Her good hand went under Rafa's shoulder. "We go slower," she said. "We go smart." Slate pushed up because he was Slate. Stubborn as sin, and twice as useful. But the bounce was gone. Ahead, the second movement window was already opening toward the heat. The shade ended like a door had shut behind them. One step, Tessa had concrete breath and fan wobble against her skin. The next one, the open asphalt threw Dallas back in her face. Heat came up from below and down from above, a double hand on the lungs. The glare bleached the service lane, until distance looked fake, all shimmer and hard white edges. Rafa stumbled at the change. His weight dropped through Tessa's good arm. She caught him, and paid for it in the bad shoulder. A deep, grinding pulse that made her teeth set. Slate came through last, head low, coat hot under her fingers when she checked him without stopping. The dog wanted forward. His body disagreed. Hale's crew moved ahead in the open. Not fast exactly, just clean enough to keep the gap useful. Even they felt it. One man wiped his mouth with the back of his wrist. Another shortened his stride to keep Rafa's route visible without wasting breath. Hale looked back once from the far edge of the lane. No speech. He saw the bodies behind him slowing. He let the heat do its unpaid work. Tessa noticed the smaller things because the big ones were too obvious. The way Rafa's hand searched for balance against nothing. The way Slate avoided the blackest patches. The way the crew ahead kept checking the same thin line of shade. "Limited closure is starting," Mara said in Tessa's ear, broken by crowd roar and radio hiss. "Not full. Not yet. Crowd impact is ugly topside. You've got minutes, maybe less. But I can't empty the whole line into this heat." Operational teller, not soft. Too late all the same. The cooler service cut behind them, took a hard metal slam. Staff flow shifted somewhere out of sight. Grant's head snapped toward it. The sound told Tessa what the map would have taken too long to say. The easier line was gone. The route had become its third promise. Open heat or hostile contact. Both charged interest. Tessa kept Rafa moving in short pieces. "Eyes up. Feet under you." He tried, but his knees had opinions. His breath came shallow. Each inhale scraping like he was pulling air through cloth. Slate drifted toward the hotter continuation, then stopped with his front paws just past a painted line. Body stiff, head turned back to her. Not refusal like the sign, now not. Contradiction, survival math. He could go there, maybe. He could not go there at speed and remain useful. Tessa hated how clear that was. Somewhere above them, thousands of people were still buying drinks, finding seats, arguing over gates, all of them protected by decisions that could not move fast enough down here. Hale changed angle when he saw it. He did not need to know what Slate meant. He only needed to see Tessa slow. His nearest man tugged Rafa's path wider through the glare, trying to force Tessa into the worst stretch of asphalt. No shade there except the thin shadow under a service vehicle. No cover except heat itself. The crew was sweating now. Good. They were human. Hale's jaw worked once. The first wasted motion she had seen from him. Then he steadied, pointed, and made them preserve their own prisoners' legs. Rafa had to arrive walking. That rule still held. Tessa used it. She cut slower, closer to the building line. The metal skin of a utility door burned heat back into her shoulder. But at least it gave Slate a broken strip of shade. It cost distance. It saved bodies. That was not a trade movie heroes liked, which made it one of the few honest trades left. Slate pushed on beside her, slower. No bounce. Breath rough but organized. Rafa muttered something that might have been blue, might have been prayer, might have been nothing but heat turning memory into gravel. Her throat had gone dry enough that swallowing hurt. She let it hurt. Pain was information. This one said the open lane was shortening their margin with every step. Grant came up on Tessa's left, face red, shirt plastered to him, eyes fixed not on Hale, but on where Hale wanted to go. "He's aiming for the clean exit," Grant said. "The remaining choke decides it." He did not explain. Thank God for small mercies. Tessa saw the same thing in the bodies, not the building. Hale's crew angled toward one service threshold beyond the asphalt, the one place still neat enough to turn movement into disappearance. The closure behind them kept tightening, too late and wrong-sided, pushing everyone forward like a hand at the back. A gust crossed the open lane. It smelled of fuel, rubber, and hot metal. Slate stopped again. Not collapsed, not dramatic, just finished with the idea of speed. Tessa put her hand briefly between his shoulders. "Slow is fine," she said, mostly to herself. Hale's crew reached the far threshold first. The cooler route was gone. The hot path had done its job. Grant stared at the choke point, then at Tessa. His mouth flattened into the expression of a man about to spend something he would not get back. "I can break his clean line," he said. "But I have to do it now." Tessa did not like the word break. In Grant's mouth, it sounded less like sabotage, more like accepting a bill the building had avoided paying. Grant moved before Tessa could stop him, which was rude, effective, and very Grant. He did not sprint. Nobody had enough clean air left for that kind of nonsense. He cut across the heat-buckled service lane. Heavy, practical gait. A man who knew exactly where weight would matter, and where panic would only get in the way. Tessa saw the preferred exit ahead through the glare. A metal and concrete threshold half in shadow, wide enough for Hale's crew to fold Rafa through and vanish into a cleaner service line. Hale wanted it because it gave choices back to him. It took them from everyone else. Grant saw that too. The difference was he had spent years listening to buildings confess. Underload, vibration, bad maintenance. Slate checked once beside Tessa. Weak but present, his breath rough against her knee. Rafa sagged harder, eyes fixed on the men ahead. "Stay with me," Tessa said. She meant Rafa. Slate, maybe her own shoulder. Grant reached the choke point as Hale's first man hit the threshold. Heat, shimmer folded around all of them, turning the distance mean and slow. The air tasted burned. Every breath carried rubber, dust, and the sour metal tang of equipment cooking in the sun. Tessa hated open spaces that still behaved like corridors. The sound came first. Metal screamed deep in the service frame, not a clean clang, a dragged, ugly complaint that ran through the asphalt and into Tessa's boots. Grant put his body where a diagram would have been useless. Consequence would have to do the talking. He did not explain anything. He did not look heroic. He looked furious and overheated. Old enough to understand exactly how expensive 1 second could be. The preferred line stopped being preferred. Hale's front man checked hard, blocked by the changed threshold and by Grant's refusal to move. A shoulder slammed into metal. Someone cursed. The clean exit became a jam of bodies, heat, and bad timing. Tessa pulled Rafa down and closer to her side, keeping his weight from dragging both of them into the open. Slate leaned against her leg, not for comfort, not exactly, more like a living gauge that still had one honest reading left. Hale's head snapped toward Grant. No surprise this time. Calculation. The kind that weighed whether the obstacle could be removed without losing the prisoner's mobility. The block did not tell Tessa how Grant had done it. It only told her what mattered. Hale's timing broke. His line folded. The building stopped cooperating for 1 brutal second. Grant paid immediately. The threshold jolted again. The force threw him sideways into the hot metal edge. He caught himself badly. Tessa saw the pain cross his face and get buried under stubbornness, which was apparently the emotional range of every competent man in a building crisis. His badge lanyard tore loose. The tablet he had carried since the first route review hit the ground face first. It skidded under a service cart. Professional exposure, injury, contract suicide, maybe all three. He had made himself part of the problem on paper, so Rafa could stay alive in the world. Hale stepped closer, then stopped, when Rafa buckled and nearly took one crewman down with him. There it was again, the leash on Hale's violence. He could hurt people, He could not wreck the living witness he still needed walking. Tessa used the hesitation to move Rafa 2 steps off the hottest line, not escape. Adjustment. In this game, adjustment was sometimes the whole damn medal ceremony. Mara's voice cracked over the radio, distant and late, talking partial closure and route teams. Tessa barely heard it. The system was arriving after the room had already changed shape. Rafa noticed none of the professional cost. Good. He had enough fear of his own. His fingers worked against Tessa's sleeve, searching for something solid that was not another hand dragging him forward. Hale adapted because men like him did not waste time hating a blocked door. His gaze went from Grant to Tessa, then past her, toward the dry corridor running off the side of the service threshold. Narrower, meaner, one-way in feeling. Even if technically that was the kind of phrase Grant would object to while bleeding, it was not the clean exit. It was what the route had left him. Tessa saw the final geography form without anyone announcing it. Grant's denied choke behind Hale's preferred movement. The open heat, cutting off the outside choice. Rafa alive between Hale's need and her protection. Slate limited beside her, still breathing hard, still watching the wrong air. Grant looked at Tessa from the threshold, face pale under the red heat. "That line's gone," he said. "No pride in it. No victory lap. Just a bill delivered." Hale lifted one hand and his crew shifted toward the dry corridor. The movement was smaller now, tighter, more dangerous, because there were fewer places left for fear to go. Tessa adjusted her grip on Rafa, felt her shoulder answer with a hot pulse. She stepped to meet the corridor before Hale could make it his. There would be no clean reset after this. No cooler bypass, no polite request through command, no time to rebuild the route. The next space would decide who kept Rafa. The dry corridor took the heat and stripped out the sky. After the open asphalt, its shade should have felt like mercy. It did not. It felt like a throat. Grant's denied line sat behind Hale in a knot of metal noise and blocked movement. Ahead of him, the hot open route bled light across the concrete, bright enough to make every face look flat and used up. Rafa stood between them. Every bad choice in the building had finally narrowed to one living man. Hale had one hand on Rafa's arm, not crushing, not gentle, keeping him upright with the exact care of someone protecting cargo he still needed. Tessa saw that before she saw anything else. Her right shoulder pulsed hot and loose under the skin. Slate stayed at her left, panting too hard, body low, eyes working even when his legs did not want the job anymore. He was close enough for courage and too spent for violence. That mattered. Hale looked past Tessa toward the open heat, then back to Rafa. The blocked exit behind him had taken away his clean retreat. The corridor had left him one ugly bargain. Move through Tessa or lose the handoff. Rafa's breath hitched twice before words found him. "Wrong turn after blue pipe," he said. Not like testimony, not like a man making sense, like a body remembering where pain had started. His eyes cut toward a strip of blue conduit, half hidden above the side wall, then to the faint seam under it, where air moved against the rest of the corridor. Then he did something braver than fighting. He stopped helping them move him. His knees did not simply fail. He shifted them, one dragging sideways until his shoe caught the rough lip under the blue line. It was not much. It was one wounded electrician using the only piece of the building he still understood. Hale's grip tightened to keep him upright. That tiny correction stole a fraction from Hale's timing. Tessa saw the gift for what it was. Rafa had not solved anything. He had made himself harder to use. That was agency, in a corridor designed to erase it. No speech, no grand stand, one ruined shoe under one blue line. One terrified man refusing to be carried through the wrong turn like freight. The route had been taking choices since the first sign. Rafa had found one and spent it. Tessa felt Slate change before she understood why. The dog did not bark. He did not lunge. He lifted his head an inch, nostrils widening, then checked back toward the wall with a weak, irritated pull of his shoulders. A vibration came through the floor. Small and wrong. Different from the fan wobble. Different from the crowd weather overhead. Seconds only. Not an answer. A warning that the air ahead was not behaving the way Hale needed it to behave. Hale's eyes flicked to Slate, then back too fast. There. He knew the queue had cost him something, even if he did not know what. Tessa shifted Rafa's weight in her mind. Hale's grip, the hot route, the blocked exit, Slate's warning, the blue pipe. Her shoulder wanted her to narrow the problem to pain. She refused. Pain was loud. It was not always important. Hale's important thing was Rafa upright. Grant's important thing was the blocked exit holding. Slate's important thing was the air that had changed under the blue line. Rafa's important thing was not going through that seam again. Tessa stacked the pieces until the answer had no elegance left. The phrase did not solve the network. It solved this breath. Tessa moved on the breath Hale needed to spend. Not fast. Fast was gone. Precise had to do. She read the corridor the way she had once read assault entries and bad stairwells. Rooms where the door was never really the danger. Hale's weight had shifted toward Rafa. The sideman was late because Slate had stolen his attention. The blue pipe seam changed the air at ankle height. The hot route ahead made everyone lean away from it without realizing. 4 facts. 1 second. Tessa did not need more. She moved short, low, close to Rafa, making Hale choose between keeping the electrician mobile and driving through her injured side. He chose Rafa, because his whole plan was built around a living man who could still stand. That was the leash. Tessa pulled it. She gave Hale pressure where he could not answer cleanly. Not into Rafa, not into Slate, not into the blocked exit that had already betrayed him. A crewman stepped in from the side. Tessa met him with the wall, her hip, her good arm. All ugly leverage, and no lesson worth teaching anyone. Pain tore through her shoulder when Hale crowded her back. For 1 second, white static ate the strip light. She kept Rafa in front of her anyway. Down, she told him. He folded badly. Alive. Hale reached to correct the movement, to keep his witness upright. That reach opened the only space she needed. Tessa drove her body into the gap and broke the extraction's shape. Not Hale, not the crew. The shape. The planned movement failed first. The men followed it. The corridor erupted into close sound. Boot scrape. Rafa's broken breath. Hale's clipped order cut off by impact. Slate's nails skidding once on dry concrete. Slate tried to rise into the space and could not. His front legs trembled. Then he sank against Tessa's shin, still watching the air as if anger alone could hold him upright. The sight put a cold wire through her. Tessa did not chase Hale. She did not take the cleanest violent answer. She kept Rafa between her and the hot route. Kept Hale from using him as a pass. Let the blocked exit behind him do its quiet, brutal work. Hale's last shove drove her shoulder into hot metal. Something deep slipped wrong. She tasted copper and dust. Then Grant's blocked line, Rafa's drop, Slate's cue, and Hale's living target problem all met in one ugly second. The extraction broke physically. Rafa collapsed against Tessa instead of into Hale's hands. This time he helped the fall, twisting his shoulder away from Hale's hand and into Tessa's bad side. Bad was still safer than taken. Hale lost the corridor. His crew scattered into bad angles and no clean exit. Above them, the crowd kept roaring, stupid and alive. Tessa slid down with Rafa still breathing under her hand. Slate shook beside her. No one cheered. The cost had only started counting. Official response arrived with radios, water, and people who looked offended that the world had moved before their forms did. Tessa stayed on the concrete until Rafa's breathing settled into something ugly but regular. He was alive. That was the whole grand official award ceremony. Right there. Slate lay on his side near her boot, ribs working hard, coat dusty, tongue out, eyes half open and still trying to work. Tessa set a shallow bowl near his muzzle. When someone finally brought water, he sniffed it, drank once, then turned away, as if even swallowing required a committee vote. His body shook in small waves. Not cute, not heroic, just spent. Rafa kept one hand knotted in Tessa's sleeve. 2 responders talked to him in careful voices. He gave them pieces, not a clean story. Service colors, blue pipe, wrong turn, the face that had escaped, hands moving him through the route. Enough to matter, not enough to pretend the whole thing was solved. Hale's local extraction had failed. The larger thing behind it remained outside the corridor, somewhere in schedules, credentials, and people who had not needed to step into the heat themselves. Nobody said victory, which was the first intelligent thing anyone had done in several long minutes. Tessa watched one responder try to ask Rafa for a clean sequence. She watched Rafa fail at it 3 different ways, each failure more useful than a lie. Fear did not arrange itself for forms. Memory did not walk in a straight line just because someone finally found a clipboard. Mara came down after the route teams, helmet under one arm, face tight with heat and arithmetic. She did not thank Tessa. Good. Gratitude would have sounded obscene in that corridor. Dry route is pulled from service, Mara said into her radio. Log it as heat movement hazard with forced flow risk. Cover the public marker until signage is replaced. Her eyes cut to Tessa's hanging arm, then to Rafa, then to Slate. They stopped being managerial for half a second before the job dragged her back. Your event clearance is suspended pending review. Tessa almost laughed. It would have hurt too much. Formal? She asked. Formal, Mara said. No malice. No triumph. Just the system arriving with its little broom, after the roof had already burned. Tessa nodded once, because arguing would not unsuspend anything. She had protected, pursued, and reported. She had also broken route discipline, ignored delay, and turned a safety review into a running fight under a stadium. All true, all incomplete. The truth had a way of showing up late and acting wounded when nobody greeted it politely. Above them, the match noise swelled again, clean and happy and entirely unaware. Grant sat with his back against the service frame he had ruined, one knee up, one hand pressed against his ribs. Someone had wrapped a towel around his forearm. He ignored it and typed on a cracked tablet, with the stubborn delicacy of a man signing his own trouble. Don't look at me like that, he said without looking up. Tessa had not realized she was looking. Like what? Like I enjoyed making the fire marshal hate me. Did you? A little. His mouth twitched. Then the pain caught up and erased it. Mara heard anyway and gave him a look that promised paperwork would find him by name. Grant sighed. Fair. Slate lifted his head at Grant's voice. Barely. Tessa put 2 fingers against the dog's shoulder. No, she said softly. You're done. Slate stared at her with the offended dignity of every good working dog ever told the shift was over. Then his head sank back down. He did not argue. That scared her more than if he had. A medic knelt near Tessa's bad side. Arm first, he said. Dog first. Ma'am, he began. Tessa looked at him. He made the correct professional decision to shut up and check Slate first. Humanity produced little miracles occasionally, usually under threat. Rafa watched the exchange through exhausted eyes. He still had one hand in Tessa's sleeve, as if letting go might return the corridor to him. Blue pipe, he said again. I heard them say wrong turn. They laughed. Not loud. Mara's face changed. Not much. Enough. She looked at Grant's broken tablet, then at the route map still glowing behind a crack. Can you mark it? She asked. Rafa tried to lift his hand. It shook too hard. Grant slid the tablet across the concrete with 2 fingers. Tessa guided Rafa's hand without making the movement his, if it was not. He dragged one trembling fingertip along the map. Past the marked safe entry. Past the middle that had swallowed him. Past the crossing where Tessa had not taken the shot. He stopped under a service symbol near the blue conduit run. Not proof enough for victory. Enough for the next search. Enough to make the building lie less comfortably. Mara took a picture of the cracked screen. Her radio spoke over her shoulder. Crowd flow. Hydration. Route closure. Complaint escalation. The ordinary machinery of a venue trying to survive the thing under it. You know this doesn't clear you, Mara said to Tessa. I assumed joy was not on the menu. Good assumption. Jehora stood. But it keeps him breathing. For a command officer, that was practically a sonnet. They moved Rafa out through the ugly route because the clean one was still being argued about upstairs. 2 responders supported him. He stayed awake long enough to hate it. That counted as progress. Slate went next on a low carry board. Tessa walked beside him until the medic threatened to carry her too. She stopped because Slate was watching. She did not need the dog spending energy worrying about her pride. Grant stayed behind with Mara and the damaged threshold. His ruined frame, his cracked tablet, his very formal career problem. Above them, Dallas kept cheering. The match rolled on. Thousands of people roared for men chasing a ball on grass. None of them knew that a service route beneath their feet had almost eaten a man alive. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe it was just the usual arrangement. People upstairs got noise and lights. People below got concrete and forms. Tessa looked once at the safe route sign as they passed it again. The bright paint had not changed. The promise still sat there in calm block letters. A lie did not need to look different after being caught. It only needed the next person to be tired enough to believe it. Tessa kept her hand close to Slate until the corridor gave them back to the heat, the radios, and the